Cool, so to get started, in Slack this morning, I put a couple of links. One of them is to our website, which, surprise, already has information about Git and GitHub, including how to install it if you're working locally. Right now, for the Hack Week, we are working on JupyterHub, which is a separate environment from your local computer. When I say local, I just mean the computer you are sitting in front of. So if you want to work with Git later and you haven't already, there are some instructions about installing it and setting up some configuration settings, things like that. A lot of the steps in here are going to be what we are going to follow today. I made a separate document with them written out a little more simply, so I might not refer to this page, but all the same information is here, including how to create a repository, how to clone that repository, how to update your README file, which is going to be so important this week. And then this really nice diagram, which sort of shows why we care about GitHub in the first place. A lot of people use GitHub even when they're working themselves, like without team members, but it is really good for collaboration. So let's say I want to make an update to like a repository for OceanHackWeek, but my teammates, I don't want to send them all the files I'm working on through email or whatever. So I'll put them on GitHub and send them the GitHub link, and then they can download everything from there. So we can just go back and forth this way. You can also do this alone if you have two computers. I have a laptop and a desktop, and sometimes I need to work on each of them. So it's helpful for individual work even. Obviously, it's also helpful for version control, which we talked about yesterday. So Eli's notes about like wanting to revert back to a previous version of what you were working on, GitHub's really good for that. There are some notes here about resolving merge conflicts. This is going to be the thing where, let's say I edit the same spot in a code file that Alex edited, and now GitHub doesn't know which one we want to keep. So we're going to go through a very simple example of this today, just so you can see what it looks like. You might hit this during the week, and if you do, we'll help you sort of fix it. And then there's some more notes down here about other ways. I'm not going to go into forking and branches today. I am going to show you guys how to all work in one repository together. And hopefully we can just use best practices to make sure that we aren't like stepping on each other's toes too much within your projects. So anyway, you can see like all of the steps here, like there's a ton of notes that you can read here later. So that will be in Slack for you. The next link I have is a very simple Google Doc, which I probably already opened, but Zoom controls are in the way. I see a few of you here already, which is great. And this is going to be, like, these are my instructions for today. So this is what I'm actually going to do step by step, that hopefully you will follow along with. But it's written out here for you later. And then the last one might come in handy at the very end. As you'll see today, sometimes you don't actually want to upload all of your files into GitHub. Sometimes computers create sort of like junk files almost that do nothing but take up space. And so if you ever want to exclude files, also helpful for excluding like credential files, I included a link to creating like a git ignore file and some helpful instructions for that. And that way you can just like push everything online, except it will ignore a certain set of files that you specify. Okay, let's get started. I'm gonna hide the controls so they're not in my way. You guys clicking through this. So first things first, everybody needs to log on to GitHub. I'm just gonna go to GitHub now. I'm on the OceanHackWeek page, but you don't have to be. If you want to, you can go to your own repositories. And I think to get started, we can just create our own repository like on our profile and clone that into JupyterHub just to mess with it a little bit before we create our project repositories, okay? So same as yesterday, I'm gonna create a new repository with that nice green button. And I do encourage everyone to follow along because the more times you do this, the easier it will be. And the owner here should be yourself. If you click this button, OceanHackWeek should also be here, and we will want to use that later, but not right now. So for now, just keep yourself as the owner, and we can name it whatever we want. So I'm going to call mine JupyterHub practice. I've already created a few practice repos for this lesson, so I'm choosing something new. You can leave it public, we can add a README, because that'll be really nice. And then here you even have the option to add a git ignore file using one of their templates. I usually don't do this because they add a ton of stuff in these templates that is irrelevant to me, but that is an option. And then licenses we might talk about later when we get to creating or copying a template from the OceanHackWeek project repo. So if you have all of this and you're set, go ahead and click create repository. And it should be that simple. My README is empty because I didn't add a description, that's fine. And now we're going to hop over to Jupyter Hub. So if you haven't already found this link, hopefully yesterday you found it. There's a link in Slack in our Bigelow channel right here, a Jupyter Hub link. Now this link is kind of special. It specifically pulls your copy of the tutorials folder from GitHub from OceanHackWeek. So every day our tutorial instructors are hopefully adding new files for you to use. This link will automatically pull those onto your Jupyter Hub instance. Other than that, it's just a convenient way to get into Jupyter Hub, so you can go ahead and run that. And that'll be, like I said, like bookmarked on Bigelow. Sometimes the little bookmark bar goes away, but if you hover near the top, it'll come back. And then once you've got Jupyter Hub open, it'll give you the option to do, you can ignore all of mine. Okay. Nice. It'll automatically give you the option to do like Python or R or Jupyter Hub or RStudio. So as long as you're in the Jupyter Hub one, you're good. I'm gonna close this too so that we're all on the same page together. You might see the OHW tutorials here, and then I have a bunch of old ones as well. What we wanna do is open a terminal. So I'm starting a new terminal session. This is sort of like your command line on your actual computer. If that didn't work, there is also the new button here, which should bring you back to that launcher in case you don't have it. Now from here.
We got a bunch of folks who are still getting positive.
Oh, sorry, yeah,
Yeah,
you
so-
guys can feel free to like raise your hands and let me know. I don't wanna steamroll, leave anyone behind. While we're waiting, were there any questions left over from yesterday, either from the first lecture, the collaboration lecture, or from the like content environment lesson?
Like, how does this versus our version correlate? Like, would we be able to follow along with our version? Like,
That's a really good
see our,
question, yeah. I have not done any of this in the R version, and I think you can still create R files in Jupyter Hub. So this should have everything you need. Hi, Ben. But yeah, Eli.
yeah, I can comment on that. 'Cause
Please,
I
please.
use the R version a lot, the R Studio version. So in the R Studio, you should, in the default, there should be a panel down in the lower left, and one of the tabs is the terminal. So you click on that, you'll get a little terminal. And once you're there, you can follow along, like Derya is working in the terminal, you'll be working in the terminal too. The R Studio is, you're still in the same Jupyter Hub, you're just interacting with the files with a different like platform. So when you're working in the terminal in the R Studio, you're working in the same terminal, it just looks different. So everything she's showing will be the same.
Yeah, that's very reassuring.
There is like a Git integrated with RStudio, same as there is in Jupyter Lab. Once she gets it all set up, you can use that if you prefer.
Okay, so that's like in the other terminal option. There's notebooks, consoles, other.
Yeah, so, okay, if you click on R, wait, that's.
So we have,
Start the hub.
we have two different profiles when you initially log into the hub.
Yeah.
One's more Python focused, one's more R focused. We tried to have all the dependencies for both in the same image, and it took forever to load, longer than what's going on right now. So we broke them apart into two separate profiles, and the R1 automatically drops you into RStudio. but it's Jupyter Lab running under the hood, so you change where it says RStudio in the URL to say lab, and it switches you back to Jupyter Lab there.
Okay.
You wanna be in our studio? I'll do it like this now.
Yeah.
When you wanna be in our studio, just raise your hand. Okay.
And Eli, do you know for our markdown files or whatever format they are, if when you're doing merge conflicts, like in Jupyter Notebook, it's really ugly because of the JSON structure. Is it messy in R?
No,
Okay,
it's, have you used Jupyter Text?
No, I haven't.
Okay, it's, our markdown's a flat file.
Okay, sweet. All right, yes,
Can you do it like zooming this?
yes.
I guess JSON's flat too, but it's just text. There's no JSON.
That is specific
Okay.
to one for the lab.
Um,
with your GitHub account.
Is anyone still waiting for Jupyter Hub to load? Yes.
What kind of error you have?
Oh. What does it say? Oh,
Yesterday.
okay, go ahead and open a new tab and start typing QIT. And I'm just gonna see if it'll bring you to I the letter I. Go ahead and click on maybe the very last one. Okay. I'm just trying to get them into the hub without pulling them. Okay, cool. And then it's that one. Yeah. Cool. All right, anybody else?
So we just reply with that, maybe just tell us.
Anyone else still waiting for Jupyter to run or have an error? of
He
any
just
kind?
needs access to the Jupyter Hub.
Who does?
If you don't have access, shoot me a message in Slack with your GitHub account.
Showed him the thread.
I have put.
Perfect. Do you want me to wait for you to catch up or should? Okay, okay. You guys can help him, okay? Cool. So, welcome to the hub. We're all here. Like I said, you might see a few folders on the left-hand side. Go ahead and make sure that you're at your like home directory. So some of you might have loaded automatically into like the tutorials folder or something like that. If you click on this little folder icon, it'll bring you just back up to the top level. And that's where we want to be if we are working on like cloning repositories. We'll see them this way. In your terminal, you should also already be at the sort of top level. And going back to my instructions, from here, we're going to run a couple of lines to get your credentials. Yes.
So we should see all the folders.
Not all of these, yours will be different.
Okay.
Yeah, these are all the things that I've sort of loaded in, including some projects from last year, including the Git dummy from this lesson last year and practice one from yesterday. So I have a lot of junk in here that I can get rid of. But first things first, we need to run this line. I see a couple of you already highlighting it. I tried to make this document as clear as possible. So anytime you're running a line in the terminal, it'll say run, colon, and then the actual code that you need to run. And I might have given somebody edit access on accident, but that's okay. Just try not to delete anything. So we can go ahead and run this. gh-scoped-creds. What this will do, it should prompt you for a login to GitHub. So it should help set your credentials in Jupyter Hub up so that you have like push and pull access, like read and write access directly to your GitHub account. And what that will do is give you a link. You can click this link right here. It'll open you to a new tab, and then you can click continue. Hopefully you're already signed in from another tab. If you're not, it might ask you for your password, which I hope you have handy. And then I'm gonna grab this 8-letter code and just paste it in. And then it'll bring you to another page saying like, hey, can you do this? And you're like, yep. Green button, I approve. Anybody have any issues with that step?
I got the same one and then.
You're in, it's not in the R profiles, so
It had the same thing.
yeah, it in the R image on the hub, it does not have GitHub scope of creds. So the area has instructions for GitHub login also.
Yes, oh yeah, so if the first one didn't work for you, you'll try this, GH space auth space login. And it'll give you a few more prompts after that. These are the ones that I chose to get it to work.
Can you make that?
Yes, thank you for asking. Did you say?
Oh, I got it too, but I had to do that. I got it now.
Okay,
Just the
cool.
login.
Perfect.
So this is connecting our notebook to our GitHub account.
Yes.
So we can pull whatever is there.
Exactly, yeah. You would have to do something similar if you weren't working in the hub and you were just working like from your command line on your computer, you would still have to do this process of just like saying like, yeah, this is my account and I want permission to push directly to it. Yeah. Same as being logged in a browser, basically, yeah. Any show of hands if this didn't work for everyone? Awesome. Now we actually do the part that works. So we run over to GitHub, not this tab that I left open. I'm not gonna leave that one open. If we pop back over to the hub or the repository that we made, there's this nice green code button. And from here you have that ability to actually clone your repository. So when I say clone, I basically mean make a copy of it on whatever system you're using. So we're gonna copy this repository. I know it's empty right now, but we're gonna copy it into Jupyter Hub and then we can code and make some changes and put those changes back on Jupyter Hub. So there are a few different options here. The HTTPS one will probably be what you want if you did the auth login line just a second ago. For everyone else, we can try the GitHub CLI line. If this one doesn't work, the HTTPS one still should. So I'm gonna grab this. This is the part I'm least sure about. But if you click that and then click this little copy button, it'll just copy it onto your clipboard. You run back here, you Command V or Control V into the terminal, and you hit enter and you wait and see if it breaks. But mine did not, and hopefully yours won't either. I know. Questions? Yeah.
It says no such file or directory.
If you type git clone first, if you're doing the HTTPS and then paste the link, that worked for me.
I can see if I need to make that clearer. Okay, so it would be.
If you're having trouble, can you raise your hand or we'll come visit? Yeah. You log into GitHub.
Yeah, that was from the previous time.
Sorry.
Yes.
Should we copy and paste?
I did. So, yeah. So did you grab this one? Or did you get her CLI? Okay, so copy it with that button and then go back to the terminal. This was confusing. I wasn't clear about it. You want to type git space clone, and then if you do Control V, it'll close that repo. Yeah, I just updated the instructions, so hopefully that is more clear later. Yeah. Any other questions?
But I git clone.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
So we're like, essentially
That's what you Okay,
Yeah.
so try again. Slower.
But with the terminal.
Yeah, it's like now it only is.
I think the CLI line is supposed to set up some like stuff for you automatically, right? It's supposed to make things easier.
Yeah, in this case, what's being set up behind the scenes. It'll show screens from others.
Yeah, the problem,
Well, when you're doing collaboration or requests, you can check out. Just know your number. Send like upstream slash random.
Eli, do you want us to?
Slash number, GHPR checkout number.
Yeah, I don't know. No, you're totally okay. It's actually
Are in.
So future proof that's great. Future Google that's great.
Yeah. It's just less like.
Really?
Okay, that's what I thought was happening. I was running this last night and the reason I have both of those in is because that happened to me too. But I think once you do the login. How does it work? Is the auth login permanent or like? Okay. And then it should have asked that. And when we do like a project for cost price. Yeah.
So you're, okay, yes.
Yeah. You're like, okay.
Yeah, I started. And then when
Okay, that should be okay. When we try pushing something back to GitHub later, if it asks you to log in, then you'll need
So
to.
that's why I was.
Yeah. Scope credentials should give you credentials for shortening site.
Scientific companies, right?
Eli said it was 8 hours.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah, so you'll have to run it again like this afternoon and tomorrow.
but it means that it's a credential saved for your next warehouse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Thank you.
All right, all caught up, Alex? Awesome. So one thing that just happened, you guys, to watch out for, when you're cloning repositories, you always want to make sure you know what directory you are currently working in. And by that, I mean like what folder your command line is currently located. Does PWD work here? Yes, it does. So right now I'm in the home/Jovian. I never knew what that was, by the way.
It's a play on Jupiter. Jovian moons.
Oh, cute. So that's sort of our like home directory in the hub. On your local system, when you're doing this like from your own terminal or command line, it'll be slightly different. You don't need to be at your like super home directory there. You just want to make sure you're not already inside of another GitHub repository. So if you do git clone and then you go into that folder and then you do git clone again, you will have problems. So try and be mindful about where you're working. If you ever need to like back out of a folder, you can always do cd ... and that'll be moving up one current directory. That's what the ... stands for. Cool. So hopefully now we've all got our repositories cloned. If we go back to the workflow, we can see what step we're at. We've left the steps for starting a new project and moved on to the steps for working on an existing project, which is exciting. So if you are contributing for the first time to a project that already exists and you haven't already cloned your repository, you'll need to do that. So I left a step in here reminding you for that. We'll do it later. For now though, we can just actually start working on stuff. So I'm going to change directory into the repository I just cloned. The way to do this is cd, change directory, and then space, and then the name of the repository. And you'll notice here on the left-hand side, I have a new folder, Jupyter Hub Practice, which is the same name from GitHub, which means I successfully copied it onto Jupyter Hub. So now I can type cd Jupyter, and I'm just gonna hit tab and let it autocomplete. And it automatically puts a slash there, so you can keep typing if you wanna go into another directory. But I don't, so I'm just gonna hit enter, and now you can see this name has updated to have Jupyter Hub Practice in front of it. And if I do pwd, present working directory, I can see where I am. So now I would not want to do another git clone here. That's a bad idea. Because now I'm already in a GitHub repository. So if we go back to the workflow, you'll notice the next step doesn't quite make sense. It says git pull origin. Why would I want to do that? Any thoughts? Yeah.
In case the repository has changed.
Yes, in case the repository has changed since I cloned it. Since I'm working alone, I know that it hasn't, but if I was working with a team member who was doing some edits while I was on my lunch break, before I start working, I need to pull their new work into my copy. So I included that here just so that if you refer to this document throughout the week, you'll see that first and hopefully you'll remember to run it. That's a very important one, and it'll save you a lot of trouble if you just remember to pull updates at the start of every working session. That is one that you can even mess up with yourself again if you're working on 2 different computers and you forget that you updated something on a different computer, you will have an issue. So that's there. I don't need to do that right now because I know that nothing has changed. If we wanted to change something, we could. If I go to GitHub, and you can follow along here, if you go to GitHub and go to your repository, we can just edit the README file. I'm going to click that little edit button that Eli showed us yesterday. I'm going to hit enter a couple of lines. I'm going to say, I'm adding some text to my README file. Feel free to write whatever you want. And then we're going to hit that green commit changes button in the top right. I'm okay with the default update README message. And I'm committing directly to the main branch here. That's fine. And I'll click commit. And now we've done an edit. So now we have changed something and we do need to run the git pull origin line. Now, sometimes you might see git pull origin, sometimes you might see git pull upstream, depending on where you're pulling from. Again, that's a little bit further than I want to go today. I was talking to a few folks last night, and I think that it's better to keep us at a sort of beginner level. If anybody here is watching this and they're like, yeah, I'm ready to like race ahead, that's what the website is for. They have a lot more, I hesitate to call it advanced, but sort of more complicated steps to the GitHub workflow in case you want to check those out. For now, we're keeping it easy. I'm going to do git pull origin in here. That's all you have to type, and I'm going to hit enter. And this is going to be our first chance of, since we cloned the repository, now we're trying to pull updates into it. And this one is really important that you run it inside of the directory for your repo. So I did the cd change directory into this repository, which means I can run this. If I was up one level, it would say like, sorry, you're not in a Git repo, and it doesn't make sense. But this worked for me. Did this not work for anybody? Because this might be a part where if you aren't logged in, it'll be like, hey, you can't do this. Okay, it's like, we're good, cool. And you can see it tells me like which file changed, how much it changed, and we're all set. So that was that step of the workflow. Moving on, now we can just start working on our project. So this is where you'll be for most of the week, like actually doing the work, creating some files or editing some files. To do that, I'm going to navigate on the left-hand side into the actual folder. So now I can see everything that we have here. And I'm just going to go ahead and create a Python notebook. I clicked that little blue plus button. And then you can see here, I have a whole bunch of stuff. Hopefully you do too, because we're all working on the same systems. I'm going to make a Python 3 IPy If you set up a local environment using Pixie, remember that you'll want to do the Pixie Python 3 kernel. But for now, I'm just going to do a regular one. First thing I'm going to do is rename it because we hate untitled notebooks. I'm just going to call this one test because untitled is bad, but unclarified test is okay. And then I'm gonna do a little code. I'm just gonna say print hello world. Awesome. You press Shift Enter to run it, it'll run and it'll give you new cells coded. For any of you who's like new to Jupyter Notebooks, they're a really nice format. I like them for sort of like comprehensive coding projects because you can have code cells and you can also have plain text like markdown cells right next to it explaining everything you're doing. And they can be really helpful and we can share some examples of what they should look like in case you're sort of new to it and finding your grounding. And now I'm gonna hit Command S to save or Control S. You'll want to make sure if you see this little dark circle next to your notebook title, that means you have unsaved changes. So you'll just want to make sure to manually save. I think there is some auto save feature, but you should not rely on it. And now I've made some changes so we can push them back to GitHub. And this is the whole workflow. It's like pulling updates, making changes, pushing updates for everyone else to get. And you're just gonna, excuse me, go back and forth like that all week. So few steps for actually getting your work onto GitHub. I have them here. You need to stage your work. So you need to, and I actually can't remember if staging is for adding or committing, but I put it here anyway. You're gonna have to add all the files that you want to commit, and you can do that in a couple of steps. The first line here is git add dot, so it's a period, and that just means add everything that's changed. That can be helpful, but it can also be a little bit confusing if you ever want to do like piece by piece commits. So do one commit message for a certain file, another commit message for a different file. You can use that to sort of do it in steps. Or sorry, you can use this other one to do it in steps, the git add and then the file name. So that would let you just add one file at a time.
I recommend doing the second option because anytime you do git add, you end up adding things that you didn't plan to add later.
Yeah.
And especially because you'll be working with other folks, maybe it's good to be explicit. I'm just adding my file because there's a chance that the notebook that they had, you just add it open and it automatically saves. So it thinks it's a new notebook, so you start getting into trouble. So it's tedious, but file by file, you know what you're adding.
I love that recommendation. So let's take Valentina's recommendation and we can just do this git add and then file name. If I type capital R and then hit tab, it should autocomplete for me.
Do you guys recommend using git status first to see which files have changed?
Yeah, I think that's the one that I didn't include in here. But we can just go ahead and add it because I don't think there's any reason. I'm gonna say check which files have changed. Git status. I'll show you what that does. You can run this anytime indefinitely. Like I run it regularly actually, but it'll just show you a list of all the files that you've actually changed. So you can see here in red, we have this test.ipynb, that's for IPython notebook. And that's like the new file that I created. The README file is not listed here because I didn't edit it. You'll also see this .ipynb underscore checkpoints. The dot means it's a hidden file, and that's why we don't see it on the left-hand side, but it is there, and this is exactly what Valentina was referring to. If you do git add dot and add everything, that will also get added, but this is what I was talking about, kind of a junk file. You don't really need it in GitHub, and that's where like a git ignore file could come in handy later if you're doing this a lot. Another one you'll see commonly is ds_store, ds store files. You really don't need them. And if you upload them to a group project, someone at some point might ask you to go and like delete all of them, which can be kind of a pain. So this is why we're gonna do git add and then the README file. Just that file. Oh, sorry, not the README file. Haha. You guys weren't gonna catch me on that one. I'm adding the test file, which is the one that I actually changed here. And now it doesn't look like anything happened, but if we run git status again, you'll see a difference. Now we've got changes to be committed highlighted in green. So it says, yeah, new file, this one. And then we've also got untracked files, which means they won't be committed, which is okay. And it even tells you if you want to include it, run git add file, which we just did. All right, going back here, so we added them. Next step is to actually commit them. And this one might look a little confusing. The commands are git commit, and then the -m lets you add a message. This would be the same like on the actual GitHub repo where I updated the README, and now we have this update README commit message. Whatever you type in this -m inside the quotes will appear here. So it's important to put something actually useful, like I added a notebook file, or I ran the results, or I created a visualization, or whatever helpful flag for yourself or for your teammates for later. And we do this by saying git commit -m, and then open quotation, and then type whatever your message is. So I'm going to say added test.ipynb. And close quotes. And I'm going to hit enter, and it'll commit all of the files that I added. So, yep.
So it's like,
Yes. Now it says, hey, I see you're trying to commit something, but I don't know who you are. They want this so that they can track who committed what on GitHub. This one's really simple, and I think the error message is kind of helpful. You can run one or the other. You don't need to run both of these. I usually run the top one, so I'm going to say git config, and I encourage you to follow along, -- global user.email, and then open quote. I'm going to put my email. You should put your own email. Close quotes. And hit enter. Again, looks like nothing happened. We can run git status just to make sure that everything's okay. I actually don't know if I need to run the git commit again.
You should be able to create. So it's not.
I agree. Yeah. Alex, you have a question?
Yeah, it says error key does not contain a section global.
Any other questions or errors so far? Was it a typo? Yeah. Oh, that's the best kind of error to have. All right. So once we've told GitHub who we are, we can try that commit again. In case you don't know this, in the terminal, if you hit the up arrow, it'll pull whatever command you last ran. So if you know you need to rerun something, I usually just hit up a couple of times until I get to it, or you can hit down to go back to a clear bar. But I'm just going to run the same commit message as earlier with the same text and everything. And now this is what you want to see, just confirming that it worked. You have one file change. I guess I typed 53 characters. Didn't feel like that, but that's probably because it's a notebook, so it has extra formatting. Cool. Any questions so far? Back to the workflow. One last step. So I think this is what can trip some beginners up when it comes to Git and GitHub, is that there are like several steps to actually getting your code online. You have to add the files, you have to commit the files, and then you actually have to push the files. The nice thing about having these split up is that you can do multiple commits for different files and then push them all at once. In this case, we're just editing one file, so it's not, I don't know, not that important, but we're going to do this last step here. It just says git push origin. Again, if you're working with like some extra branches and creative stuff there, then you might need to do git push upstream, or probably not likely though. Usually we do git push origin. Sometimes you might need to specify which branch you're doing. So if you want to do the main, but again, keeping it very simple. Now we run an error, which says error. Is weird. I wasn't expecting that, which always happens with this lesson. What if I just do git push? Yeah, okay. I'm gonna try, did anybody else get this? Yeah, awesome. We're all together in it. Let's go back and try this. This is what I was worried would happen. Let's try the GH auth login for those of us who haven't already done it. Because right now it's telling us we have a permission error, which means we don't have permission to write to our own accounts, which means it probably doesn't realize that we are who we say we are. If you run GH space auth space login, it'll ask you these questions. Go ahead and whichever one is highlighted in cyan is the one that you have selected. Phil, if you want to catch up really quickly, we're following the steps in the Google Doc that I linked in Slack. Cool. I'm going to hit enter on the github.com. I'm going to hit enter on the HTTPS. I'm going to say yes, please authorize. I'm just going to type a Y and then hit enter. And then it asks if you want to log in with a web browser or use an authentication token. I'm going to tell you the web browser is probably going to be the easiest option. And it tells me to open github.com, my browser. But will it automatically bring me to, I didn't think so. Oh no, it says press enter to open GitHub. So copy this code. Please don't copy my code, copy your code, and then hit enter. And then it should, if it worked for you, it should automatically open a web browser. Otherwise, this link should have an underline. You should just be able to click it and it'll open it for you. And then we're going to go through a very similar screen that we did earlier, which I know is confusing, and it's confusing for me too, and that's okay. We're going to authorize GitHub one more time, and then it's going to ask for your password, which hopefully you have handy. If you need to find it, please take a minute to do so. And then it will say, congrats, all set. We'll pause and give everyone a second to do that. Yeah.
So is it possible to increase the font size of the terminal?
Of the, yeah. How's that?
It's better.
Is that better?
Yeah, thank you so much.
And then click that link right there, yeah.
Anybody having any trouble with this stuff?
Yeah. So sometimes I'll forget to do the message
Mhm.
when I commit and I get to this screen that says type a message and I don't know how to get out of it.
Oh, Alex, do you know what she might be talking about?
It hasn't happened here, but if I did. Just edit something.
We can try and recreate it with the next edit we do.
Yeah.
That's likely from the default editor, being Vim on some system. And once you open Vim, there's no way out.
It's terrible.
But
Yeah.
it's like command exclamation point Q or.
I think it's like colon
For
Q A.
Vim, for Vim, if you're typing, once you're done typing, hit escape, colon Q or colon WQ, that's right click, hit enter, it should pop you out.
Thank you. I will write it.
I've never done that specifically for your case, but it should work.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of them. But that's okay. All right.
The lesson is always make sure you include the commit message.
Yeah.
When you're doing
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, Kat?
We just went through this process of authentication, like how long does that last for? Or is that a one time, you have to do this every time?
I'm not clear on that. I think the off login line is permanent, but I don't know for sure. But we'll find out this week, I guess. Yeah.
I just had my head down when, what gave you the error that led to this?
Oh, yeah, I was trying to push and it told me that I didn't have permission. So I went through the extra GH off login step. But if you didn't, after committing, you do git push. You can add git push origin. And then if you get that message, you can do the steps that I just did, which are also on the workflow document. But hopefully now, if that login worked for everybody, I can close that tab. And if I hit up and I'm gonna do git push origin again, just to be clear. Hopefully now it'll work. And the way I can tell it worked is it said counting objects, writing objects, no big error messages. Says done, looks okay.
Okay.
And if we navigate over to GitHub and refresh the page, I have a notebook. And I have a commit message, yay. Yeah, Eli.
I just wanted to note that the authentication that's happening lasts for 8 hours.
Okay.
At the end of 8 hours, you do this again, but in my experience, I just run it, I type that code in and it works. Like there might be some hiccups the first couple times as you like get used to it, but then after that, it's really seamless. And this increases the security substantially. Like, if this is the only thing you are committing to, maybe that seems like nothing. To me, you know, I have hundreds of repositories. I am also with a federal agency. The last thing I want is to accidentally have a token sitting out there in random Jupyter hubs that someone could get access to things. So same for you. It is a slight amount of hassle. Doing it every morning vastly increases the insecurity. And it also makes Jupyter hubs not be a target for people going out there and finding tokens to people's GitHub accounts.
There's some ways, if you wanna set up something in the future for your, for your work, there's some ways to set up a secure, secure file on the computer that talks to GitHub. And I can send you the link, but that's something for you to do if you don't wanna do it all your life. There's secure ways to do it. It involves a lot more steps. You have a key that you're gonna store on the computer. It's supposed to be secure, encoded key. So I'll share the link for those who want to share. But to Eli's point, what you can think of, okay, think about your dissertation. You don't want that to be repeated. You can just do that.
Moving on. So any issues? Does everybody see their new file or whatever you might have added on GitHub? Yay, and now if you were working on a project, you could tell your teammates, hey, go pull down the edit I just made or that file I just added. And that's super exciting. Going back to our project here. So I do want to show you guys what happens if you have a merge conflict. They can be headaches, especially if you're working in Jupyter notebooks. They are super ugly in that JSON structure, the underlying structure of notebooks. So I kind of want to show you what happens just so that you have seen it once. You don't need to necessarily follow along with this unless you really want to. But I told myself I would show you guys, so I'm just going to commit to it and show you what happens. First thing I'm gonna do is just add something here. So I can add a new like print statement. I'm gonna say goodbye world or something. And I can run it and I can save my file. And now I have new changes. But what happens if somebody else also changed the file? If I go back to GitHub, and I'm gonna do something really terrible, which is editing a Jupyter notebook on the GitHub website. And I don't think you should do this. But I'm doing it just because I'm only working on one computer. So this is what I have to do to create a merge conflict. Bear with me. Going down to that other cell that I just had, and you can see these empty quote marks here. This is, by the way, this is what Jupyter notebooks look like when you look at just the raw text of them. This is JSON structure. It's just another file type. But there's all of this weird, complicated stuff. And you can see somewhere here, there should be a source, and that says print hello world. And that's the line that I wrote and uploaded. And you can actually see the text output up here as well. I don't know why they're out of order. I wouldn't worry about it. But if I go down to the next cell, I can see this source and then open brackets and then open quotes. And that's exactly this cell that I just edited here. So if I print something else, or even if I just type a bunch of random letters, and then I commit these terrible changes through GitHub, I'm saying editing test.ipynb from GitHub. This is a mistake. But let's see what happens. So now you can see the notebook has changed. It has another, bit of text in that cell, and that's also sort of where I was doing this edit here. If I do not pull those changes and I just do the rest of the workflow where I'm like, okay, I made a change, I'm ready to commit it. I'm gonna do, first of all, git status. And you can see, look, I modified the test notebook in Jupyter Hub. So I can do git add, and then test.ipynb, and then do git status again, just to see what changed. Now it's in green. And I'll do git commit -m, and I'm gonna say edited test.ipynb from Jupyter Hub. And I'm putting this kind of message just so that we can see in the commits which one we end up keeping. Cool, and the commit goes through with no problem because I'm still working on Jupyter Hub. I haven't talked to GitHub yet. But if I try doing a git push origin, it'll tell me, oh no, error, failed to push some refs to this link. And they were rejected because the remote work, or the GitHub version contains work that I don't have locally. So it even tells you, like, this is usually caused by another repo pushing to the same reference. And you need to do git pull before pushing again. But what happens if I do git pull? It says, oh no, you have divergent branches. This is code for you have a merge conflict. So 2 different changes in the same place, GitHub doesn't know which one to keep, and it can't just automatically keep both. You have to tell it if you want both, and you have to sort of resolve it yourself. Now there are a couple of extra lines here, so it didn't pull so that I can handle that merge conflict automatically. This is something I was working on last night, which I didn't get a chance to talk to the other experts in the room about. But I found this no rebase flag helps. So if we do git pull and then _no -rebase, that will get the merge conflict on. And then you'll see the test notebook will change and we'll have 2 different pieces of code. And now it tells you exactly where the merge conflict is, which is actually very helpful. It says automatic merge fail, fix conflicts, and then commit the result. You can see the modified time for that test notebook updated to 5 seconds ago. If I go into the notebook, it doesn't look like anything changed, and this is something really confusing. If you try and reopen the notebook, you'll have an error, and that's because the text that a merge conflict produces automatically breaks notebooks, but we can still fix it. Discard those changes and wait for it to close. Okay, and then right-click, open with editor. Don't know if the JSON works or it might be better, but this is what I did yesterday and it was fine. Again, I'm hoping you guys don't have to do this, but this is that same like ugly output that we saw from GitHub. And if I scroll down to that next cell, you can see it put in all of these brackets and it says head and then some equal signs that are separating the 2 different versions of code I have. And then it gave us this really long sequence that I think is some kind of identifier that you don't really need to worry about. But this is what you'll be looking for. Anytime you have a merge conflict, this is the structure it'll give you. You'll look for this heading and these equal signs in between the 2 different lines of code. So now we just choose one. I'm gonna say like this one is garbage, so I'm gonna delete it. And you could just edit it directly in here. I'm gonna delete that. And you wanna make sure your structure still looks okay. You have the source, which is kind of signifying like this is the actual cell. And then you have these open square brackets, and then in quotes, you have whatever code you wanted. And I put that in the Google Doc so that you can see it. It'll look way better in a Markdown file or in an R file. I just put a copy of the Jupyter one because it's so messy. But you can see here I have the source for the actual code cell, and then that heading, and then the 2 different lines of code. And you can choose which one to keep. And then this is sort of what you would want at the end. Just a single line in there. So I fixed that, saved my file. That's gracious. And now if we do, I don't think we need to do a git pull again, but we can if we want to. And it'll tell you it doesn't want to because you still haven't solved that conflict. We solved it locally though. So I'm gonna do git status just to see what we're working with. I'm going to do git add test.ipynb. You can do git status again. Hopefully you'll get in the habit of doing that because it can be kind of nice. And it says all conflicts fixed, but you are still merging. And you can use git commit to include or to conclude the merge. So git commit -m and then say fix merge conflict exclamation mark smiley face because we're super happy about it. Make sure you close the quotes. And then we can do git push origin. And now we don't get an error, hooray. And if we go back to GitHub, we can see what happened if I refresh this page. Now it'll have the code that I chose to keep. And it'll have, if I go to the actual repo, you'll see the latest commit message will always show up here. You can go to your commit history and you can see the two different commits, one from GitHub, one from JupyterHub, and then the fix. Any questions about that? Yes.
Say you had like just like a regular Python file and you had like two different like functions or definitions. If you had one person edit one function and a different person edit the second function, would that produce a merge conflict as well?
No, this is the really nice thing. Even if you're working in the same file, as long as you're working in different parts of the file, GitHub will automatically merge everything. So if it says, okay, yeah, you edited function 1, but your teammate only edited function 2 or whatever it is, that doesn't conflict with each other. We can accept both and there won't be any like overwriting of each other's work. You're both going to be overwriting whatever was previously there, but hopefully because you're doing that on purpose, hopefully that's okay. And even if it's not, you have the historical version that you can refer back to for GitHub. So yeah.
Is it also true for notebooks or just formatting?
Also true for notebooks, as far as I know, yeah. And if it's not, then we're going to get really good at merge conflicts this week. Yes.
I'm still like thinking through what
Yeah.
happens with the merge conflicts. So say I have conflict, it automatically inserts that like caret head.
Yep.
So if I am trying to solve them manually, can I just, there's like a way to like quick search it and
Yeah,
move out?
control find through the file for those characters.
So resolving merge conflicts is just finding all of those,
Yeah.
picking what the final form would be, and then resaving.
And re-pushing, yeah. That's exactly it.
Demystifying.
Yeah. I hope so, because I remember when I learned Git, this was way above me. I could not handle this. But hopefully seeing an example is helpful. Hopefully you guys won't have to deal with this week if we do some like best practices, if you're really talking to your teammates about who's working on what and when. And if you're really good about doing a Git pull before making changes, because that would have solved my entire issue. But also if you hit a merge conflict and you're like, oh no, Derya showed us this once, but I don't remember what to do, like just let us know and we'll come help. Any other thoughts or questions? Yeah.
Do you ever recommend using GitHub Desktop?
Yeah, oh yes, we were talking about this morning. I actually love GitHub Desktop. It can be kind of a crutch because you'll forget all of the command line stuff. So everything that we're doing in the terminal right now can actually be done through a GUI. And I can probably just pull up GitHub Desktop to show you what it looks like locally, but we also have it in the hub. I would say if you've already used it and you really like it, I'm not gonna make you use the command line instead. But this is what GitHub Desktop looks like. It's basically like a user interface program that does all of these little lines of code for you. So if I changed a file in our website repo, it would show up here, and I could check a little box and type a little commit message right here and then commit it. And then there's a push branch up here. You can even see different branches that your team members have created. So if you're ever worried about like pushing to the right branch or pushing to the right PR, GitHub Desktop can simplify things. I still think it's good to have seen examples and tried a couple of your own like commits and pushes and pulls through the command line. But like if you leave OceanHackWeek and then you want to use GitHub and you want to try GitHub Desktop, I say go for it. I totally respect if other people have different opinions though.
Yeah, we have a couple like mini Git clients on the hub. There's like section on if you're using Jupyter Lab, and our studio has its own view of Git, so you can use those. We can't install GitHub Desktop in the Jupyter Hub, not a traditional Windows system.
But we do have this version that Eli showed me this morning. If you see on the left-hand side of your Jupyter Hub, by the way, we haven't talked about notebook kernels for anybody new to Jupyter Notebooks. If your computer or your hub ever starts running really slowly or has some issues, double check that you don't have 10 million kernels active. You actually can go in here manually and shut down kernels for individual notebooks, so it'll clear like that working memory for each of those, and that can help sometimes. That's in the second button down, but the fourth button down actually does have some GUI work for GitHub, so you can see, or for Git rather. So here you can see we have this test checkpoint IP binary, which is probably not the right one. But it'll show you like which files you've changed, which ones you've staged. It'll let you submit a little commit message here and then commit this way. So this is another way to do it. Eli, I think, said that through this left-hand side menu, does it show you merge conflicts here?
Yeah, it actually has a pretty nice merge conflict way that it deals with it. It'll show you the two files that have the merge conflicts, and then it has something that you can resolve them. So yeah, that's pretty nice. The revert aspect is nice. Click on the history. Yeah, you should be able to roll over things and revert, I think.
Cool.
Probably. You can see the, oh, it's got, you can see the differences. That's a handy thing. Like if you click on one of those somewhere there, it'll show you what it looked like before and what you added, all the changes that happened. So it's got, if you're a visual person, I like the GUIs a lot. I use them mainly. I obviously can work, I can work on the command line, but I'm a visual person, so I like the GUIs.
Yeah, especially when you start dealing with multiple branches, like I think you can see that there's multiple histories going on at the same time through there, and then they come back together, keeping those relationships in mind.
Yeah. So this is accessible from Jupyter Hub. Again, it's that fourth button down on the very side. This can be helpful, especially too, if you're super new to Git and this is like very confusing. Checking out this sort of stuff might be a little bit friendlier for beginners, just to track changes and staging and all of that. So I would say like within project teams this week, please have a conversation about like your comfort levels with Git and GitHub, where everybody's at. Make sure that like, you know, if you're really comfortable and you're ready to do branches and all this additional stuff, make sure you check with your teammates first, so you're not like steamrolling people or making it more complicated, and then we end up on that side of Eli's graph where we're like frustrated and unhappy. We really don't want that. So I would say like try and pick a low level where everybody feels comfortable and where Git is a tool and not a barrier to you doing your work this week.
Yeah. One couple comments. One, remember, no Git push force.
Yeah.
No matter what Stack Overflow tells you, do not do that. If you get so frustrated and you still do that, just come and get help. We'll help you out. I'll get the team together and fix that. And then the other thing, as you're learning, it's really easy to get over in that zone of frustrated, pulling your hair out, especially the first time you get a merge conflict. We've all been there. Just get one of us, we'll help you. You don't need to suffer.
Yeah, that's what this week is for. And if you're gonna make mistakes with Git or other stuff and hit roadblocks, we got a lot of folks here who dealt with that. And it's not your thesis. It's not, if you go away from this week and all the code you wrote is broken and the repo is in shambles, but you've learned a lot, that's what's important.
Yeah. Also, don't be afraid to Google stuff. If you get a weird message and you're like, I have no idea what this means, but it's too soon to ask for help, Google it and see what you can find, because we Google stuff every minute of every day when we're coding.
At one point, if you get to the point of having to edit a lot of JSON, that's pretty dangerous, I would say.
Yeah.
So if you encounter conflicting notebooks, maybe chat with us, because there's some other ways to get around it, like get the older version. So instead of like trying to do it directly, maybe just better to get the previous version and start clean. Because I can see how the notebook can break and then try to solve the break. So yeah, if you get to that, maybe chat with us before we start the workflow.
Yeah, and on that point, like also don't be afraid to really simplify it and just have every team member working in their own notebook. Because that way you can still see what everybody else is doing, but you're not at risk of editing the same spot in the same file. And that's not like ideal long-term, but for the sake of this week, again, just to like get you rolling with everything, if that feels more within your comfort range, that's absolutely okay. We see people do that all the time here. Any comments or questions about what we've done so far? I have a couple extras down here. When it comes to setting up your project today, I do recommend writing like all of your ideas and notes and data sources and team members into a README file. That's obviously an easy one to accidentally have some merge conflicts. Might be good practice if you want that. Otherwise, idea for you all is just to start your README in a Google Doc where you can all edit live safely. And then once you're sort of at a pausing point or you feel good about it, you can copy paste it into your README file. And it's just one commit instead of everybody committing frequently. So that's one idea. Another resource I have here is this Markdown cheat sheet. For those of you who are new to programming, because I know we have a couple in the room, Markdown is its own language. I know we've said Markdown a few times since yesterday. That's the structure that you'll see for your README file. So if I go to GitHub, oh, not there, I want to go to the repository. This README right here is in Markdown. And basically that means it has some fancy formatting. So you see this hashtag, that's a header. You can add other hashtags. You can bold your text, you can italicize it, you can do lists, you can do tables. There's all kinds of stuff here that can make your README really pretty. And again, like I said earlier, Jupyter Notebooks also have README capabilities. So here I've got a couple of code cells. If I wanted to turn this cell into a Markdown cell, I could just go up here and hit code and then change it to Markdown. And now you'll see the little brackets next to it went away. And if I type hello world and then hit shift enter, it's just plain text. And I can do Markdown here as well. So I could say, get out of here, say hashtag, now it turns blue and it's bigger. And you can use this to sort of prettify your notebooks and just make them a little bit more structured. You can put, like at the very top, you can put a description of here's what the notebook is doing, or here's the context of our project, or here's the team member working on this specific notebook, or something like that. You can also put links to resources, and I just wanted to include that Markdown cheat sheet at the bottom there. I can also put it in Slack for easier access, but this is definitely worth using. That's the whole workflow.